So, till now, we have spent a lot of time understanding different machine learning models. Now, if you think about it, all these models are very powerful. Each one is capable of solving complex problems in their own way. So, naturally, you might think if I choose a good model, my problem should be solved. But this is where most people make a mistake. In real world machine learning, models are not the biggest challenge. Real challenge is the data. Because no matter how powerful your model is, if the data is not prepared properly, the model will definitely fail. And not just fail, sometimes it will give results that may appear correct but are actually wrong. So there are multiple examples of bad data. Your data may have missing values, or maybe what if one feature has values in thousands and other one is in decimals, and many more other reasons. All these problems happen before the model even starts learning. And if they are not handled properly, the model will learn the wrong patterns. So from this point onwards, we will shift the focus from building a better model to preparing the data in the right way. Because in machine learning, a well prepared data set with a simple model will always outperform the complex model with the poorly prepared data. And if you ever deployed a model that worked perfectly fine in testing but completely failed in production, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So let us start understanding how data is actually handled before it reaches the model. The first thing to understand is why and how should we split the data. We should not train the model on entire data set. We need to divide the data set for different purposes. Suppose you have a data set and you use the entire data set to train your model. After training, you check the performance on the same data and you see that the accuracy is very high. Now, the question is, can you trust this result? The answer is no, because the model has already seen this data during training. So it is not really predicting, it is just remembering. This is similar to a student who practice only one set of questions and then gets the same question in the exam. And of course, his test score will be high, but that does not mean the student has actually understood the concepts. So, to properly evaluate a model, we need to test it on the data that it has never seen before. And that is why we split the data. But here is something important. When you split, you need to maintain the distribution of your target variable. For example, if you are predicting loan defaults and only 5% of your data contains defaults, you cannot randomly split and end up with all the defaults in training and none in the test data. This is called stratified splitting, and it ensures each split has the same proportion of each class. Most libraries handle this automatically, but it is crucial to know why it is important. We typically divide the dataset into three parts: training data, validation data, and test data. So let us understand each one. Training data is used to train the model. This is the data from where the model learns the pattern. It adjusts its parameters and tries to reduce the error. Validation data is used during training to evaluate the model. We use it to tune hyperparameters. Hyperparameters are the external configuration settings which are used to structure and control the learning process of a model. It is usually set by the user before training begins. For example, choosing the right value of k in KNN, or choosing the depth in decision trees. It helps us compare different versions of the model. Other than this, we have test data. It is used at very end and only once to get the final performance of the model. Think of it like this: training data teaches the model, validation data helps you make decisions about the model, and test data tells you if those decisions which you have made using the validation data are right or not. For smaller data sets, you might skip the validation set and use something called cross validation instead. But the test set, that is non negotiable. Now, one important thing to understand here is the model should never see the test data during training, because the moment it sees the test data, it is no longer a fair evaluation. So, if we connect all of these things together, the flow may look like this: we train the model using training data, then we tune and improve it using validation data, and finally, we evaluate the model using test data. This may look very simple on the paper, but here is where things get tricky in real projects. And one of the most dangerous mistake is data leakage. Data leakage happens when your model gets access to the information that it should not have during the training, especially the information from test dataset. Now, at first, this might sound like an obvious mistake. You might think, I will never train my model on the test data. But in real scenarios, leakage does not happen directly. It happens in very subtle ways. Let me show you how it is actually happening. Suppose you have a data set and before splitting, you decide to do some pre processing. For example, you calculate the average of a feature and fill the missing values. Now, if you calculate this average using the entire dataset, you are indirectly using the information from test dataset. So even though you did not explicitly train on test data, the training process already is influenced by that. And this is one of the forms of data leakage. The main problem is that it gives you very good results. Your model will show very high accuracy and everything will look perfect. But when you deploy it on the real world, the performance will drop suddenly. Because in real world, that leaked information is not available to the model. So your model can no longer cheat. This happens because your model was never truly learning from the real pattern. So how do we prevent this data leakage? Here are three rules that will save you. First is always split the data before doing any pre-processing. Secondly, any operation like scaling, encoding, or filling missing values should be done using only the training data. And then the same transformation should be applied to the validation and test dataset. Third is always think from a deployment perspective and ask yourself, will this information be available when model is actually used? If the answer is no, then it should not be part of the training dataset. So if you can connect this with whatever we have discussed earlier, splitting the data is not just for evaluation, it is also for protecting the model from leakage. Now, once the data is properly split and protected, the next step is to clean that data. So now let us understand the most basic cleaning step, how we handle the missing data. In an ideal scenario, every row in your dataset should have values for all the features. But in reality, that almost never happens. You will always have some values that are missing. Maybe a user did not fill the field, or maybe a system failed to capture it, or maybe the data was not available at that time. So now the question is, what should we do with these missing values? Can we just ignore them? The answer is no, because most machine learning models cannot handle missing values directly. If you try to train a model with missing data, it will either throw an error or give incorrect results. So we need to handle them properly before training. We have multiple approaches for that. The first and simplest approach is to remove it from the data. If we have very few number of rows which are having missing values, we can drop those rows. But this works only when the missing data is very small. If a large portion of data is missing, removing rows can lead to loss of important information as well. So in that case, we need another approach. The second approach is to fill the missing values. This is called imputation. But what should be the values that we fill and that also make sense? For numerical data, a common approach is to use mean or median. Mean works well when the data is evenly distributed, and median works better when there are outliers. For categorical data, we usually fill with the most frequent values. But here is something important to understand. When we are filling the missing values, we are making an assumption. We are saying that the missing value is similar to the average or the most common case. This is not always correct, and if we are not careful, it can introduce bias in the model as well. So, there is another approach where we create a separate category or indicator for missing values. For example, instead of filling, we can add a flag column that tells whether the value was missing. This sometimes helps the model understand that missingness itself carries some information. And this brings us back to our golden rule. All these operations should be done using only training data. For example, if you are calculating the mean to fill the missing values, you should calculate it only on the training data and then apply the same validation to test data as well. If you calculate it using entire dataset, you are already introducing data leakage. So just to summarize this part, missing data is very common. We either remove it or we fill it. But every method comes with assumptions, and we must apply those steps carefully to avoid data leakage. Now, once the missing data is handled, the next challenge is that not all data is in numerical form. So now let us understand how do we convert categorical data into a format that a model can understand. If you look at the real world dataset, many features are categorical. For example, city name, product type, user categories, payment methods. These are not numbers, these are labels or categories. Now, the problem is that most machine learning models work with numbers. They cannot directly understand text or categories. So, the challenge here is how do we convert this categorical data into numerical format without losing its meaning? Now, here is a very simple idea. We can assign numbers to each category. For example, red will be assigned 1, blue will be 2, green will be 3. This is called label encoding. It is simple and easy to apply. But there is a problem. When we assign numbers like this, the model may assume an order. It might think that the blue is greater than red or green is greater than blue. But in reality, these categories have no order. So we are introducing a relationship that actually does not exist. This can definitely confuse the model. This approach works only when the categories have actually natural order in them. For example, we have low, medium, high, and then we give them numbers in that particular order. So in such cases, label encoding makes sense. But for categories that are just labels with no ranking, we need a different approach. And that approach is called one hot encoding. In one hot encoding, instead of assigning a single number, we create a separate columns for each category. For example, if we have these three categories, red, blue, green, we create three columns. So here, if the number is red, then red will be 1 and all other will be 0. And if it is blue, then blue will be 1 and all others will be 0. So for each data point, only one column will have value 1 and rest will have value 0. Now, if you notice, this removes the problem of ordering. All categories are treated equally now. There is no false relationship. But this also introduces a new issue. So if the number of categories is large, then the number of columns will also increase. This can make a dataset very large. So we need to be very careful when using one hot encoding for high cardinality features. And here is one more important point. Just like missing data handling, encoding should also be done using only training data. For example, if a new category appears in the test dataset that was not present in the training data, we need to handle it properly. Otherwise, it can break the model. So, just to summarize this part as well, categorical data cannot be used directly. We convert it into numbers using encoding. Label encoding is the simplest one, but it can introduce wrong relationships. To fix that issue, we can use one hot encoding, but that can increase the dimensionality. Now, once all the data is in numerical form, there is still one important problem left. Different features can have very different scales, and this can affect how model learns. So now let us understand why feature scaling is important. Suppose you are building a model to predict house prices and you have two features. One is area, which can be in thousands, and another one is number of rooms, which is usually between 1 to 5 or maybe maximum till 10. Now, if you look at these two features, their ranges are very different. One is large and other one is very small. Now, the question is, will this different affect how a model will perceive the patterns? The answer is yes, especially for certain algorithms. Let us take gradient descent based model like linear regression or logistic regression. In those models, we are trying to minimize the error by adjusting parameters step by step. This adjustment depends on how the cost function behave with respect to each feature. Now, one feature has very large value. Its impact on the cost function will also be large. So during training, the model will give more importance to that feature which is having large value. Not because it is more important, but simply because its scale is larger. This can lead to inefficient learning, and the model may take even longer to converge, or maybe not even converge properly at all. Another issue is the path taken during optimization. So instead of moving smoothly towards minimum, the model may take a zigzag path because different features are influencing the updates unevenly. So to fix this, we bring all features to the similar scale. This process is called feature scaling. Now, there are two common ways to do this. First is min max scaling. In this method, we convert all the values into a fixed range, usually between 0 and 1. So, the smallest value will become 0 and the largest value will become 1. Second one is standardization. Here, we transform the data so that it has a mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1. This helps in centering the data and reducing the variance differences. Now, the big question here is which one we should use out of these two approaches. So min-max scaling is useful when we want values in a specific range, and standardization is more commonly used when data has outliers or when using algorithms like SVM or logistic regression. So distance-based algorithm like KNN and K-means also need standardization because they literally calculate the distances between the points. Now, one important thing to remember here is scaling should always be done after splitting the data. And the scaling parameters like mean, standard deviation should be calculated only on the training data set, as we have discussed multiple times in this video. Then after doing that, it's the same will be applied to the validation and test data. Otherwise, we again can introduce data leakage. So if you connect everything together, before training any model, the first step is to properly split the data. Because without a correct split, we cannot truly evaluate the model. Then we need to make sure there is no data leakage. Because even a small leakage can give misleadingly good results and completely break the model in real world scenarios. After that, we handle missing data because real world data is never perfect and models cannot work with incomplete information. Then we convert the categorical data into numerical form because machine learning models understand numbers, not labels. And finally, we scale the features so that all inputs are on the similar range and model can learn efficiently. Now, at this point, we have cleaned the data, handled missing values, converted categorical data, and scaled the features. So now the data is finally ready to be used by a machine learning model. And this is why in real world machine learning, data preparation is often more important than the model itself. Because if this part is done correctly, even the simple models can outperform the complex models. Now, till this point, we have understood how machine learning models work and how important it is to prepare the data properly. But if you notice, all these models depend on the features we provide. That means the model is only as good as the input we design. So now the question is, can a model learn these patterns on its own? And that is where we move into neural networks, where models start learning features automatically instead of depending on us. So in the next part, we will start from a single neuron and build it from there. So stay tuned and keep learning.